What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Player Profiler Primetime News on Player Profiler Now. I'm Mike Lindberg, and I'm here with my co-host, the man who is always bringing the heat, Coach Retzlaff. Together, we're going to dive into everything you need to know headed into the Super Bowl, from the fantasy football breakdowns of Mahomes to Worthy to deep dives into the Saquon Barkley impact. We've got the latest news, analysis, and predictions to get you ready for the big game. So sit back, grab your favorite snack, and let's jump right in. Yeah, what a weekend of football it was. The Commanders, though, they did not come out swinging. The struggles to Super Bowl, the Philadelphia Eagles, how they overcame their early doubts to dominate in the NFC Championship game. So, Jeremiah, a couple of back and forth situations here. The Commanders, the third time playing the Eagles, it just wasn't going to happen for them this week. Their run defense just didn't match up to the powerhouse of Saquon Barkley. You want to tell everybody, break it all down for us today?
Hey, in baseball, they call it the rubber match. That third game, when you split the first two, well, the Eagles were absolutely dominant. They dog-walked the Commanders 55-23. Jaden Daniels has taken over Jalen Hurts in Dynasty rankings. However, Jalen Hurts wins the day. Jalen Hurts, 33.44 fantasy points. That's just in 4-point passing. Hurts was 20 of 28, so they had 8 more pass attempts than the prior week, 246 passing yards. We had made much of Hurts throwing for less than 200 yards in 5 of the last 6 games. Hurts utilized the run game plenty, but there was a little bit more to the passing game. 1 touchdown, though, no interception. So the straw that stirs the drink was still the running game. Hurts, 3 rushing touchdowns, 10 carries, only 16 yards. So it was all in tight and close. Remember, Hurts had house one from out far the week prior against the Rams. The concern for Hurts, though, his injury, did not seem to bother him one bit. The man that put the Eagles in position to win, though, was Saquon Barkley. He rattled off 3 touchdowns of his own, 15 carries, 118 rushing yards for 31.2 fantasy points. It was the 60-yard rush and a 4-yard rushing touchdown in the first quarter that had the game starting to get out of hand early. And keep in mind, too, Saquon Barkley probably could have had 4, maybe even 5 touchdowns. Late in the game, we had Will Shipley, some ship sanity, come in for an injured Kenneth Gainwell, and he banged a touchdown in himself. Jaden Daniels did strike back with Terry McLaurin. There was a 36-yard touchdown pass in the second quarter. But late in the second quarter, though, Jalen Hurts pushed in from the 1. The Commanders had 3 field goals in the first half. It was a lot like driving 55 when somebody else is driving 80. You know you're getting where you need to go, but people are dusting past you. And that's what the Eagles did. The Eagles were just turning drives into touchdowns at will. And maybe you could critique, should the Commanders have been more aggressive instead of the field goals? Absolutely. Look at the final score. Terry McLaurin ended the day with 14.1 fantasy points, 3 catches, 51 yards, and a touchdown. Terry McLaurin was the wide receiver 4 on the season. He had a career year. Things are only looking up in Washington. If you go over to our Player Profiler News today, I wrote up on Terry McLaurin and Jaden Daniels. And then, of course, we have some other talented writers who are writing about Senior Bowl players. So get brushed up on all your rookies and, of course, all the current events in the National Football League. Hurts and Daniels, they traded rushing touchdowns in the third quarter, so it was fantasy goodness. Daniels had 25 fantasy points on the day, 29 of 48 completions, 255 passing yards, a touchdown pass to Terry McLaurin, and Jaden Daniels had 6 carries for 48 yards and a touchdown. Daniels is in Dynasty Startup 101 overall discussions. Just a great year overall for him, but good luck telling him he was good to get as far as they did. Jaden Daniels will be back with a better supporting cast, most likely at wideout. And don't be surprised if the Commanders select a running back as well in the 2025 draft. In a deep class, why not? And I think that's going to be a theme as you go through the NFL draft, you're going to see teams say, well, I'll have a running back while I'm at it, like you're shopping at the grocery store for a revenge game. Zach Ertz, we saw how heartbroken he was post-game. Zach Ertz showed his old team he has plenty left in the tank. 11 catches, 16 targets, 104 receiving yards, 21.4 fantasy points. The chemistry is there with Daniels and Ertz. Don't be surprised if year 2 Ben Sinnott has to wait to happen with Ertz coming back on a cheap deal. Ertz was a tight end 7 in 2024. I did see where Zach Ertz was talking about post-game how he wishes he could be young in his 20s coming up with Jaden Daniels. That's the highest form of respect that another player can give a teammate and a peer. Another difference in the game was the Commanders' 4 turnovers to the Eagles' 0, protecting the football. Daniels threw an interception, and then there was a trio of fumbles. Austin Eckler, Jeremy McNichols, Diami Brown, all lost fumbles. So the magic ran out on the Commanders. The Eagles' passing game was tuned up a little extra this week. A.J. Brown hit for 6 catches, 96 yards and a touchdown. I had the over on his receptions yards, and I had the anytime touchdown bet. So that was good to hit the trifecta. All single bets, not a parlay, but you got to feel great about that. Dallas Goedert came away with 7 for 85, and Devonta Smith 4 for 45. Devonta Smith had a double toe tap reception for 20 yards. That was really a thing of beauty. You got to go back and watch it. The overall takeaway from the game is that the Eagles are just a better overall team than the Commanders. 55-23. It left no room for interpretation on any unfair calls. There were some favorable calls that went the Eagles' way, but no one can say with a straight face that the Eagles did not dominate outright. So, Mike, we've got twice in 3 years, the Eagles are going to the Super Bowl, but now we've got the threat for the three-peat. The Chiefs, Bills, recap. Break it down how it happened. How do we get to Patrick Mahomes being in position for a three-peat in 2 weeks?
Well, I mean, he's headed for his third straight Super Bowl, securing that 32-29 win over the Bills. That AFC Championship game was one for the ages, and Mahomes once again proved to fantasy football his value. 245 yards passing, a touchdown, but 2 rushing scores. His dual threat ability continues to be a fantasy manager's dream as Mahomes consistently provides points through both the air and on the ground, and with clutch field goal drives late in the game, Mahomes once again showcased his ability to perform to high pressure moments. His versatility, especially during the playoff games, makes him a must-start fantasy quarterback in these top tier type of situations. One of the biggest surprises for fantasy football fans was rookie Xavier Worthy, who had a breakout performance in this game. Worthy caught 6 passes for 85 yards and added 11-yard touchdown to his stat line, proving he's already a reliable target for Mahomes. His performance was especially noteworthy considering the Chiefs snagged him after the Bills traded away their 28th pick in the draft. They moved up to get him against the Bills. Now he had the ability to step up, and in that high pressure situation, he made it count, and they built that chemistry, him and Mahomes, and his fantasy value is only going to rise. Fantasy gamers who grabbed him late in the season are looking like geniuses now, and what a surprise ending it was for the Chiefs. I mean, everybody thought that this game would be back and forth, and they just prevailed. As for Josh Allen, throwing for 237 yards, 2 touchdowns. James Cook rushing for 85 yards, 2 touchdowns. They couldn't overcome the Chiefs defense in the final minutes, though. Allen, you know him, a fantasy star all season long, and did his best to lead the Bills to the Super Bowl, but he just couldn't do it. He missed a 4th down opportunity late in the game, and that sealed the Bills' fate. Fantasy gamers who had Allen and Cook in their lineups this week in those DFS had really strong performances, but the Bills once again couldn't break through against Mahomes and the Chiefs in the postseason. Allen's stat line was respectable, but his inability to pull off the comeback stung both in real life and in fantasy. So looking ahead to the Super Bowl, well, the Chiefs will face the Eagles in a highly anticipated rematch like we talked about 2 years ago, the Eagles with Jalen Hurts and their high-powered team, they're going to have to stop Saquon Barkley, and Jarrett and I are going to break it down in our coach's corner and our chef's table. We're going to take a side and kind of break down the game itself and what to expect in fantasy football. But before we do that, if you notice in our little corner here of our overlay, we've got the fast draft emblem there, and that is us promoting the fast draft. And we're going to hear from the Podfather right away about it right now.
Oh, I see all this mock draft information out there. Oh, this mock, that mock. Hey, what about a real actual fantasy game? The Flex 4 game on Fast Draft, draftfaster.com, is open. You draft 6 running backs, wide receivers, tight ends. The top 4 enter your lineup every week. It's that easy. It's that simple. Drafts take 5 minutes. There's a $50,000 prize pool. It's $15,000 to first. It's just a $5 entry. And the best part, no rake. No rake whatsoever on Fast Draft, the first 2025 Best Ball contest to open in the world, is ready for you to draft up to 150 teams. Draftfaster.com, draftfaster.com. Start playing Best Ball for real.
Yeah, buddy. And yeah, I mean, if you can get it, it's a great app. And let's continue on. We got a couple people in the chat here. Shout out to Jamie, who's always in our chat every single day. So shout out Jamie. He's got some predictions about the game. And shout out to Chev, who is also here hanging out with us on this fine Monday evening. Now, Jeremiah, we've got some more things to break down. Underdog is in full swing now. We love to have it back. Probably, you know, you're used to seeing some familiar faces in the draft room. So let's break it down here, Jeremiah. Let's talk about your next story here, bud.
Very nice. So underdog drafts dropped. Also, to the point of Fast Draft, go out and get your Fast Draft app. Make sure you go and play. It's another opportunity. There's plenty of opportunity to play on all different best ball formats. Fast Draft is just another very easy, very intuitive. And as the Podfather said, it takes very little time to assemble teams. I like personally adjusting the rankings to the amount of players in the contest each week. It's very simple. And to me, you can gain an edge when you do a set and forget and put in your order for the drafts to just take place. You don't even have to be there and participate. So a lot of fun there. I think there's a lot of edge to be had. Speaking of edge, let's talk about Underdog. It dropped just yesterday, and we have all these drafts. This is the little board, big board, ADP. I just want to talk a little bit about the first round. A couple of notes on each player. Ja'Marr Chase, wide receiver 1. He's the 101. Gets the nod over Saquon Barkley. This is a half-point PPR format. Chase was the advanced rate player, wide receiver that you needed in 2024. 1,708 receiving yards, 23.7 fantasy points per game, was number 1, followed by number 2 in ADP, Saquon Barkley. Barkley is 3rd in our explosive rating, 1st in rushing yards just this year, 2,329 yards, 4th in total touchdowns with 17. We saw Barkley hang 3 yesterday. So I was drafting Saquon Barkley. I got a lot of 101s and 102s in the top half of the draft, and I was clicking Saquon Barkley. It felt great. It was kind of surreal to see me clicking Saquon Barkley for next year when I'm still watching him for this year, but that's the beauty of these drafts. 1st in running back fantasy points per game with 22.7. Chase and Barkley, the bona fide number 1s at their positions, so they're naturally at the top. Bijan Robinson, 3 overall ADP, RB4 on the season, 5th in rushing yards, 6th in receiving yards, 3rd in fantasy points per game with 20.1, 2nd in expected fantasy points per game with 18.9. Bijan is really a 40-point game waiting to happen on any given week. His price is still high because we haven't really gotten the full-on breakout of Bijan Robinson, so it's scary to think of how much better he can be. Tyler Algier does mix in. It's a lot similar to the Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery dichotomy. So to the point of Bijan and Gibbs in this first round, naturally David Montgomery and Tyler Algier in later rounds will present great value. But again, you're not going to not select and get exposure in a portfolio, especially to Bijan and Jahmyr Gibbs. At 4, and it is shifting a little bit from yesterday, but I have from 4 from yesterday. Now he's 5.8. It's Puka Nacua, first in yards per route run with 3.29, first in formation adjusted yards per route run with 305, second in fantasy points per route run with 0.68. The thing about Puka Nacua, there are going to be some people who want to fade him just because of there's concerns about Matthew Stafford's health, what that could be. I would posit to you, I was discussing with somebody in a Discord, what if Puka Nacua, and they were saying to me, is QB proof, kind of like Malik Neighbors. So respectfully, you have to have some exposure and a requisite amount of Puka Nacua. I don't think you can just full fade him, especially as he's going here in the top 5. Jahmyr Gibbs has moved up to 4.7, second in explosive rating in 2024 with a 131.1 score. Gibbs will be the 1A in the offense. Expect David Montgomery to be a value later too, as I spoke to before. You still have to pay up. You can't be fearful of the Algiers, of the David Montgomerys. You have to love the supreme talents. Justin Jefferson has slid to the 5.7. He was the wide receiver 3 in 2024. Justin Jefferson is a player who I've seen go already at the 1.3, and I think it'll be easy to snowball rostership on Justin Jefferson just for the fact that we're not so far removed from Justin Jefferson being the 101 in drafts. And as great a season as Jamar Chase had, it's not disrespectful to say that Justin Jefferson and Chase could flip in 2025. They're in the same ballpark. Now, speaking of same ballpark, we have CeeDee Lamb and Nico Collins back-to-back, 8 and 9. Remember, we had so much fun with a combat zone with Nico and Ladd. Nico and Ladd are just a few picks apart, but Nico Collins has the edge in early ADP. But it is just kind of funny how we've talked for a couple months about the value between CeeDee Lamb and Nico Collins. And here, as the cards flop, they're back-to-back in ADP, and you get to make your choice when you're up. Devon Achane is now 11 ADP. He moved around just since yesterday from the 9 spot. Achane with 592 receiving yards, 907 yards rushing. He had 78 receptions. Remember, PPR, half PPR. Achane is the perfect PPR back. He's tougher in half point. The impression I have on Devon Achane is that you were able to get him in the double digits his rookie year and reap massive rewards. And then you had last year third, where it seemed steep, but if you paid up, it paid off. Now we're almost to max ceiling where there could be a cliff for Devon Achane. It'll be very interesting. I think you still have to click him requisite exposure. That's really the standard line. Christian McCaffrey is coming in too. He's at the back half of round 1. Perfect discount for him. We aren't going to get the 2-3 turn discount. You'll always have to pay up some on this format. So these discounts, there's sharp drafters. Now, Christian McCaffrey at the 12 spot. You're not going to get a couple rounds like you would in redraft. Brian Thomas Jr., we love him, Mike, at the 11.9, wide receiver 5 on the season, 5th in receiving yards with 1,282, 5th in yards after catch with 562, 6th in total touchdowns. We got Liam Cohen in Jacksonville. I am pumped and hyped. Brian Thomas Jr. already showed he was agnostic to quarterback play, so he could have an even better system. So the stonks are all the way up for Brian Thomas Jr. Then, of course, Amon-Ra St. Brown, huge discount for him. I think he's at the back half of the first round. You could easily make an argument for Amon-Ra to be in the top half of round 1. And honorable mention, Malik Neighbors is there at 13. I've been able to double tap. We talked about on the Dynasty Pulse. We talked about other shows. Is it Brian Thomas Jr.? Is it Malik Neighbors? The easiest thing to do is just split your exposure on them, chop it up 50-50, be happy. but I've been able to get them at the turn, 12-13, bang, bang, a couple times, and I got BTJ 10, and I got Malik Neighbors 15. So there's ways to get them and finagle onto the same team. So those are my impressions. Mike, just a question for you. How do you feel about this early round 1 ADP where we've reshuffled the deck and you got to pay up for all these guys?
Well, I mean, it's a shuffle of what it was last year. You got a lot of younger names in there, some emerging stars here, and what may seem like some values probably aren't at this stage. You mentioned like a Christian McCaffrey. I don't know how much he's got left in the tank after seeing what his knees held up this year. So, he may look very, advantageous at this stage of the game, but honestly, I have no idea at this stage how to approach Christian McCaffrey. I'm going to have some exposures, but I'm not going to be heavy on him based off of that, because he could be a league winner, but he could also cost you like he did this year. So an interesting first layout of what this looks like in the landscape of underdog. So we're gonna have to keep it glued to that, and let's start moving that business over to Fast Draft here, where everything is coming together here for us on Player Profiler. So with that said, I'm going to start talking about a new coach hire, and that is in Las Vegas. Pete Carroll now making a pivotal moment for that franchise. One of the fans and fantasy managers alike will be watching for closely. Carroll, who has been a storied of history success, including Super Bowl title, 10 playoff appearances. He's got the experience to stabilize a franchise that has struggled for years. His leadership will be key in rebuilding this phase as the Raiders look to improve their roster that has underperformed in recent seasons. Fantasy gamers should pay attention to how Carroll shapes this offense, particularly in terms of the quarterback situation and the running game, with one of the biggest question marks since the departure of Josh Jacobs a couple seasons ago. Jacobs leaving in 2023 left the Raiders' backfield a complete mess last year. The team struggled mightily with a rotation that featured Zamir White, Amir Abdullah, Alexander Madison, none of whom were able to step up and become consistent producers. White in particularly had a disappointing season, failing to establish himself as that primary option. And there was a lot of factors, obviously, poor offensive line play, poor quarterback play, poor play calling. There's a lot of things that played into this. So, Carroll having that history of prioritizing that run game, he's going to be looking for a dynamic running back, possibly through the draft, or to solidify it as a veteran maybe in this offseason. There's a lot of high-powered talent in this draft, so I think the Raiders could be in line to upgrade there, but they're also going to be looking at that quarterback position, which is another huge concern for the Raiders headed into 2025. The team has cycled through a series of quarterbacks like Jimmy Garoppolo, Gardner Minshew, Aiden O'Connell, taking turns under center, but with Carroll now at the helm, there are whispers of about a potential reunion with Russell Wilson. That has already begun, but Wilson, who had a solid finish to 2024 with the Steelers, also had a rough start in Denver, so there could be some ruffling here. We'll see what happens if Carroll and Wilson do rekindle their old flame. They could have some success like they had in Seattle, but it will have significant implications to the receiving core, like their tight end, Brock Bowers, who had an incredible rookie season. And I'm excited to see what this new coaching regime brings there, new quarterback. We'll see what happens. The 2025 season could represent a turning point for the Raiders as they look to retool their roster and return to playoff contention. Very interesting play here, bringing in a very old coach, on a 3-year deal, like my boy Biggs mentioned, in his write-up here. It's going to be interesting to see how this plays out, but they got some leadership that has been a proven winner, but who knows if that mentality stabilizes and results in fantasy magic in 2025. Like, I'm not sure this is going to happen.
Well, it's funny because it just makes me think of the movie Big Daddy, where Adam Sandler gets left by his girlfriend for a very, very old man. And she's all about, he's got a 5-year plan. And Adam Sandler just goes, what is a 5-year plan? Don't die. And it's funny, mortality comes up. We have very old leadership at the highest level in our political system in athletics. So it's very interesting, strictly with football here. UNC, you have Bill Belichick, Chapel Bill. He's here locally in North Carolina. What's the plan there? How long can he go? I would love to see him, and I'm not being funny, I would love to see him do 5 years and then maybe hand it off to his son. And then, of course, with Pete Carroll, you're going to have to, how quickly can you accelerate with his shelf life? I really don't think it enters Pete Carroll's mind that it has to be within the first 1 or 2 seasons. Granted, Pete Carroll's going to want to win, but I think he's just got a forever young mindset. And so long as he's moving and going, Pete Carroll probably thinks he can go into his 80s. So
no
pretty
kidding.
inspirational.
Yeah. So, folks, if you guys are enjoying the show, don't miss out on more exclusive content. Player Profiler Now, the YouTube channel. We are just shy of that 1,000 mark here. Let's get us over that mark right away. We need to hit that 1,000 subscriber mark before. Let's make a goal here right now, Jeremiah, for us. Let's set a benchmark, maybe by the combine that we get that 1,000 mark. So let's push that right now. That's going to be a goal for the news team here to push our Player Profiler Now channel up to 1,000. What do you think, Jeremiah?
I think you're spot on. 100 followers about or so left. So we'll keep it 100 while we get another 100 people in here, and then we'll have you right by the combine. Get here sooner. We're already jumping on the rookie content and, of course, all relevant events. You just want to stay ahead. When people dip and dive out, the worst thing you can have is on draft day, especially come August into Labor Day, when you have your drafts with your buddies and you have that regret of not preparing. I'm telling you, between now with the best ball drafts that we talked about, with the fast drafts that we've had, with startups that you can do, and the content that you can lock into, it will be the baseball will look like a beach ball when it comes to drafting your redraft teams. And there's no better feeling for that. And why not just do it while you're having fun and enjoying that time? Now, part of those angles is to see things in the market. And we want to get you on bullish and bearish.
0-1. M.O. Come on.
So I am very excited. We talk all the time how much I really like the bullish. It gives you a little bit of a dopamine rush. You get something extra charge from the sentiment of bullish. When you have a stock market, if you have, Apple stock, I know Nvidia went down today. Psychologically, seeing the red, it messes a little bit with people subconsciously. But when they see green in their portfolio, it has a way of subconsciously helping you just be at ease. It releases some dopamine. So we're talking bullish, we're talking bearish. And what's fun about what I have, my bearish is going to be embedded in something that I think is positive. I'm bearish on the Commanders' running backs, Austin Eckler and Brian Robinson as a collective. This one's rather simple. Under the lens of not getting the job done and Jaden Daniels clearly needing more support on offense, the writing is on the wall for the Commanders to select a running back in the 2025 NFL Draft. Again, I referenced earlier, teams are just going to be like, we've got about 7 picks on average. One of those can be a running back in this deep class. The Commanders, consider a free agent running back. But why do that when you can have a cheaper rookie clock set? Both Eckler and Robinson Jr. are free agents in 2026, so they'll most likely be back in 2025. So there's some money already with Eckler and Brian Robinson Jr. It makes even more sense to draft a rookie versus splashing in free agency. Granted, the Commanders have plenty of money, but they want to get that out to the receiver position. Austin Eckler has some impressive stats, but the league-winning upside is gone. The week-over-week fantasy goodness just isn't there. The Commanders need to bring in a more skilled and younger running back. Granted, Austin Eckler will still be around, but you got to bring in the future now. Austin Eckler was the RB32 on the season. There was a 112.9 explosive rating, which ranks 6th for running backs. Eckler had only 2 top 12 games in 2024. and that was in 12 games. Eckler did have a few issues with the concussions that kept him out, so health is a concern there. 10.3 yards per reception was first at the position. Eckler was first in yards per touch at 6.6 and third in team run plays per game with 31.5. So that's a collective team stat. A lot of that is Jaden Daniels, but it was enhanced by Eckler and Robinson. So what I'm saying is there's plenty of fantasy goodness to inject into a youthful running back. It sounds like you might want to buy Austin Eckler. However, I'm bearish on how things are set up now because you need somebody to come in and compete with Eckler and Robinson. Brian Robinson Jr., impressive 2023 stats that we liked as a value for 2024. Robinson averages 11.7 fantasy points per game, was held under 1,000 yards rushing with 892, did benefit from 10 touchdowns. I think that is more a testament to Jaden Daniels keeping defenders off balance. Robinson was 39th in true yards per carry at 4.0, 39th in juke rate, 85th in expected points added, and 41st in yards created per touch. So my takeaway is that with how much the Commanders run, they can be even more dangerous to complement Jaden Daniels' rushing prowess. This is a copycat league. You need to look no further than their opponent in the NFC Championship game. The Eagles are Super Bowl bound with Saquon Barkley. So the combo of Hurts, Barkley out of the backfield is near impossible to stop. I have a very hard time thinking that the Commanders are going to have what the dog walk that they got put through, are not going to just go to the drawing board and select a day 2 or a day 3 running back. They're going to come away with something. So that's my bearish, Mike. I'm really interested to see your bullish. We have a bear in bullish. Caleb Williams, what do you got?
Well, it's been a long season for Caleb Williams, but now I am feeling bullish about his future, especially in fantasy football with the Bears' new head coach, Ben Johnson, coming aboard. The Lions' former offensive coordinator the past 3 seasons, Johnson's offensive never ranked lower than 5th in points per game, including a number of 1 finishes in 2024. Johnson has shown a knack for consistency, efficient offenses, and ranking in the top 3 for red zone snaps and airing it out 54% of the time. His leadership led Jared Goff to consistent fantasy finishes of top 10 QB finishes, something that Goff had never come close to before Johnson's arrival. So this track record, it bodes well for the future for the Bears and fantasy assets, particularly Caleb Williams, who is easily going to surpass his QB 16 finish from last season, in my opinion, with Johnson's tutelage. The Bears certainly have a lot of work to do, especially on their offensive line. Last season, no team allowed more sacks than Chicago, with, Caleb Williams taking the brunt of that pressure. However, the Bears held on to picks and, including 4 top 75, 2 picks in this draft. They have plenty of room to improve and the opportunity with their line to create a more balanced offensive attack. And, I think a running back in this draft might head the Bears' way as well. So this could really open up a legitimate fantasy asset for Caleb Williams with the additions of a good offensive line, a top-tier running back. Williams has the tools to be more than just a QB2. He could live up to that top-tier fantasy quarterback aspirations that we had for him in 2024. In addition, Johnson's offense should benefit for key players like DJ Moore and the potential breakout candidate, Rome Odunze, with Johnson calling the shots. If the Bears decide to part ways with Keenan Allen, which is a good possibility here, Odunze's target share could see a significant increase, and that just means great things for both Caleb Williams, Rome Odunze, DJ Moore in 2025. So I'm cautiously optimistic about this change there. We know this is Chicago here that we're talking about, and we got to figure out what is going to happen in that offense now. But Ben Johnson, all signs pointing up for Caleb Williams, Rome Odunze, and DJ Moore.
I love it. And just a little plant. What if at 10 overall, Ashton Janty is getting push for first-round draft capital. Ashton Jeanty is polling into the first-round mocks. The Dallas Cowboys are one of they're at the same time the laziest and the smartest pick to select a running back. At 12, it's just a matter of when will these teams pull the trigger. The thing that's advantageous, if you're 10 like Chicago or 12 like the Cowboys and you have your second round pick, then you're still in a sweet spot in the early second round to go and get a running back. Now, entertain the thought exercise of Ashton Jeanty, Ben Johnson trying to get his own Jahmyr Gibbs. Just a phenomenal back. I just think that would be so huge and big for Caleb Williams, to your point, and then we could have the ascension of Rome Odunze. I've been drafting some Rome Odunze in best ball already. I like your call, Mike, on the bullish nature of Caleb Williams. We've talked and hyped up, and we've put Jaden Daniels all the way up here because he is all the way up here. But that does not mean that both things can exist at once, where Caleb Williams rises up. Maybe he's just up here compared to Jaden Daniels, but he improves significantly. So I love your bullish take on Chicago Bear, Caleb Williams.
Awesome, man. Well, we are getting close to our great segment here. Let's get into the Coach's Corner, where you are going to break down the AFC champions, the Philadelphia Eagles. Let's go, Coach.
Oh, man, Mike, you threw me for a loop for just a hot second. I was like, wait a second. There's no way I've got the Chiefs tonight. You are the ultimate Chiefs fan.
Sorry.
We love that. Oh, yeah. Yep. You got the Canadian story. I couldn't be happier, man. Jalen Hurts. This is the second time in 3 years the Philadelphia Eagles are going to try and take out the Patrick Mahomes-led Kansas City Chiefs. The really cool thing is that the narrative is going to be, how can the Eagles stop the three-peat? You got Saquon Barkley, who's, of course, a huge fan favorite. Jalen Hurts, we saw him play his heart out his second year, in Philadelphia, where they went to the Super Bowl, and it was just a back-and-forth affair. Jalen Hurts, QB6 on the season. Although Jaden Daniels has passed Jalen Hurts in dynasty ranks, it is not like Jalen Hurts can't outproduce Jaden on any given week. Hurts is in the same ballpark. We saw Jalen Hurts outperform Jaden Daniels this week in fantasy. So Hurts rushing is where it's at. He has regressed as a passer this year. The Super Bowl year versus the Chiefs, Hurts had a totally different mode to him. This year, Hurts' best value is through the ground, being judicious in passing, and catering the offense to Saquon Barkley. Hurts in 2024, second in carries with 163, second in carries per game, 9.6, first in red zone carries, second in red zone carries per game, third in rushing yards with 736, and the 15 touchdowns ranked first. Of course, that's a tush push. It's inside the 3. They're getting that ball in. On the contrary, Hurts was 20th in pass attempts, 20th in passing yards, 32nd in team pass plays per game. So when I spoke about being judicious, it's been from very few attempts. It's not ideal at all to support A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith, but it's very hard to argue with a 14-3 regular season record and a Super Bowl berth. Now to the straw that stirs the drink, Saquon Barkley. Barkley had a healthy year. Thank God for that. Barkley was the RB1. He has a number 2 overall ADP that I spoke to on the initial underdog rankings. Barkley rushed for 2,329 yards. He could have gotten the record. He just didn't play that last game. 17 total touchdowns. He played all 18 games. Barkley was third in explosive rating with a 126.2 score. First in fantasy points per game at 22.7. Barkley, we saw him go off against the Commanders. We don't see running back health run as pure as it did in 2024. Appreciate the moment, because this team has been driven through Saquon Barkley and their strong defense, and they're one game away. A.J. Brown hit all his overs against the Commanders. Over on yards, receptions, and had a touchdown. A.J. Brown now has a 28 ADP in the third round, and Devonta Smith is at 41 in round 4. The price has dropped big for A.J. Brown, who was a first-round pick last year at the 1-2 turn. A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith aren't suddenly not good. Brown and Smith are just not in an offense anymore that funnels the ball towards them. If the Eagles have to open it up, I have all the confidence in the world A.J. Brown can get the ball if it's lobbed up to him. The problem is Jalen Hurts, the trust for A.J. Brown. Will he trust it enough to lob it up to him? Tom Brady gets a lot of heat for how he's been announcing, but Brady called it perfectly in the game against the Commanders when Hurts hesitated to lob the ball up 1-to-1 for A.J. Brown in the end zone. I've waited for this weakness to show up in the playoffs, but the Eagles, they're just one game away from disproving the need for the pass. Devonta Smith, what can be said for A.J. Brown is near exact same for A.J. Brown. It is interchangeable, and their stat lines vary week to week. The chances of both Brown and Smith having a huge game are slim, so usually one or the other has a bigger game if it's even available. The Eagles, again, it's worth repeating, 32 in team pass attempts per game. Dallas Goedert, ready for this? Second in yards per route run with 2.6 at the tight end position. Goedert, third in yards per target with 9.7. Goedert also had a 20.2% target share, but tight end 18 on the season. So Goedert always seems ready for this blow-up game or a big play waiting to happen. It just doesn't happen with the frequency that we would like. Goedert is exactly who he is at this point, a tight end too with some occasional spike weeks. Very little week-over-week reliability. As to Kenneth Gainwell, who was getting some work and some series to spell Saquon Barkley, we'll see how he is on the injury front. Will Shipley gave us some excitement, gave some of those dynasty shares some excitement. So I like what the Philadelphia Eagles have to offer. Of course, Mike, you've got some favorability with the Kansas City Chiefs. Can you break it down for us in your chef's table?
Oh, yeah, that gets me pumped up every time. And what else gets me pumped up is that the Kansas City Chiefs are in the Super Bowl for the third straight year and will be eyeing key players who have consistently delivered big numbers throughout this postseason. Patrick Mahomes is, of course, the centerpiece of the Chiefs offense and the fantasy juggernaut. 245 passing yards, 2 rushing touchdowns. I mentioned that earlier, but Mahomes has continued to put up fantasy numbers in the playoffs and lead it into the playoffs, in those important fantasy football weeks, the playoffs. So even when faced with intense pressure, his ability to make plays with both his arm and his legs makes him a top-tier quarterback. And with that proven track record, he's got over 300 yards in multiple playoff games. Fantasy owners can expect him to be one of the top performers in the Super Bowl, obviously. And against a formidable Eagles defense, Mahomes is the type of player that you can rely on to deliver in clutch moments. I'm ready for it. Another player to watch. We talked about it earlier, Xavier Worthy. He's emerging, and that connection has got Worthy late in the season, reaping all the rewards, and he'll continue to develop that chemistry with Mahomes. Looking ahead to the Super Bowl, the Eagles will likely have their hands full with Worthy. He could be in line for another strong performance as, this game progresses. I know that speed is going to be a factor, and Kansas City's offense is going to expand it, making him a potential breakout star in this game. Travis Kelce, of course, also remains another top-tier fantasy asset, but Mahomes' go-to weapon. The Eagles' defense will likely focus on containing Kelce, and his ability to find space and make plays is unmatched. Kelce has been consistent performer in the postseason, and we have had him in our lineups, and we're accustomed to that high floor, high ceiling potential. And I think this week they're going to need to rely on him even more so than they did this week, where the high stakes are the highest this Super Bowl. Kelce is going to be expected to continue being that focal point of the Chiefs offense, whether a red zone target or just that chain mover on third down. Kelce will likely be involved on those key plays, but let's talk about some wide receivers, some veteran wide receivers. JuJu Smith-Schuster, Marquise Hollywood Brown, and DeAndre Hopkins, they all will play key roles in this if the Chiefs plan on winning the Super Bowl. They have added valuable experience and playmaking ability to an already potent offense. Smith-Schuster, what a game he had. He had some standout moments in that AFC Championship game, converting both his targets for 60 yards at crucial times, proving his ability to step up in clutch situations. The chemistry with him and Mahomes has steadily grown throughout the seasons here, and he was a spotlight, and he may be a factor in the Super Bowl. Who knows? Juju's ability to make big plays in crucial moments could prove invaluable to the Chiefs' success. Hollywood Brown has also been highly involved last week in the AFC Championship game in the Chiefs passing attack. He's provided a deep threat potential, but also, design plays off the line. He could challenge the Eagles secondary in this one. His ability to stretch the field and open up opportunities for other receivers like Kelce and Worthy will make him a key piece in the game. And lastly, on the receiver side, DeAndre Hopkins remains one of the most consistent and reliable receivers in the NFL in crucial moments, particularly in the red zone. So I think he might be a guy that they might be relying on him in those key situations when they need him the most. Not expecting a huge game from him, but these three veteran wide receivers will certainly have their role in the Chiefs offensive game plan, and they will make significant contributions, whether it's, a 1 yard third down conversion. They are going to be relied on. And finally, the running back committee, including Isaiah Pacheco, Kareem Hunt, will be crucial to the Super Bowl success, controlling the clock, keeping Saquon off the field. The running game hasn't been as dominant as their passing attack recently, but both Pacheco and Hunt have had their moments of brilliance this postseason. Hunt has shown the ability to break off big runs and move the chains in crucial situations, and Pacheco has been reliable in the receiving game and out of the backfield. Against a tough Eagles defense, the Chiefs will need to establish the run to keep Philadelphia's pass rush in check. From a fantasy perspective, Pacheco offers some upside, but I'm looking at Hunt here to be the main guy. He looks like he's got more in the tank at this point. So Mahomes, Worthy, Kelce are the guys playing the crucial roles, and they'll be the most relevant in the Super Bowl. I'm looking forward to this one in mass. Let's go.
So just a little bit on the look ahead at the line so far. It is -1.5. Chiefs are favored. -124 on the money line, +106 for Philly on their money line. You spoke to Kareem Hunt. Kareem Hunt is +130 to score a touchdown. Isaiah Pacheco +270. So the books like the favorable role that has come in for Kareem Hunt. -200 for Saquon Barkley. He's really good for it. It's tough to lay -200. At the same time, you may want to entertain a touchdown ladder at that point. Jalen Hurts -115. It feels like he falls into the end zone near every game. That might be one of the best bets that you can have out there. A lot of different cool plus odds, but the over-under is showing 49.5, which that to me, I think both teams are going to try and keep a pace and a tempo that's more comfortable, conducive to the run, judicious passing. I can see the clock getting run plenty. So it'll be very interesting if this game ends up shooting out, a lot like we had in that first Super Bowl matchup. It is funny, the Chiefs, they talk about all the calls that they get. We recall that holding call that got hit on JuJu Smith-Schuster. I can't remember the defender's name at the moment. But it came down to that play, and people complained. So we shall see. There will be plenty of drama. I know the sideshow of Taylor Swift will be more than appealing for the NFL from their end as far as revenue goes. This game is really going to have it all. it may not be the Publix matchup that you wanted. And as much as people want to complain about the Kansas City Chiefs, people are going to be locked in. This is going to be a great game. I'm excited, Mike. Mike, how are you feeling as a fan? Are you nervous? What's your level? You've been through this quite a few times now. You've had wins, you've had losses, but you've been year over year. What's the charge? Are you neutral? What's going on?
Well, I just think that they're built for this kind of stuff, and just like me as a fan, you're built for these type of games where they're gonna rely on Mahomes. They're going to rely on the play calling. And that's what it was. It went down to coaching. It went down to Mahomes being the better player in that game. And the defensive side of the ball, Chris Jones is a dominator. And that's just what it's going to come down to. And I just don't know. I mean, the Eagles are going to have to, come and play flawless football. And, they have to not make a mistake, and all the pressure's on them. And the Chiefs are well-oiled, seasoned veteran squad that just know how to handle these situations. And when the pressure's on, time and time again, Mahomes has it, just like Brady did. These guys just have the it factor when the game is on the line, and they know when the switch is happening. And I just don't see it happening with the Eagles. Like, they need to have that Mahomes factor. They need to have that Brady factor, and they don't.
I think of it as you're running up and down the court in the summer. The games are won in the spring. They're won in the summer, right, for the fall. And they practice this ad nauseum. And I really think that Patrick Mahomes locks in the same all the time, to the point where you take last year against the 49ers, he had been there. Patrick Mahomes, the team, it was almost no different pressure-wise because they had done it so many times. It's very interesting, though. Steve Spagnuolo really should have taken over after Tom Coughlin. He should have been the next Giants coach. And there's talk about how stupid the NFL is for not taking him from the Chiefs, and that the Chiefs are just going to keep printing money, winning Super Bowls. It is very underrated. People think, oh, well, Patrick Mahomes hasn't been the same fantasy quarterback the last 2 years. Well, their defense has locked in so well that people underrate the fact. Speaking of the Patriots dynasty, the early Patriots dynasty had a lot of excellent play from the special teams. The defense was phenomenal. Those later Brady years, it was only when he became more of a preeminent passer, and that's not taking anything away from him. But what I notice about these last 2 years Chiefs teams is it's the trifecta. It's the whole team. It's the offense, the defense, the special teams, all guys doing what they need to in clutch situations. And that is, if you want to break the fourth wall, that coaching. So, like you say, it's going to be tough.
It's going to be a battle to the end, and I'm excited to see what happens in the stretch here. So, Jeremiah, it's time for us to go head to head in our battle. This week, we've got a really good battle in Combat Zone. We've got who is going to emerge in 2025 as the front runner in the RB position. So let's hit it up.
It's go time. It's go time. It's go time. We going up. We go.
So we've dominated the show. The theme has been a lot of what happened in the AFC and the NFC Championship game. And, of course, we've talked a ton of Eagles, talked a ton of Chiefs. Now there's just a little brief part of what could go and venture into next year. We have 2 weeks from now, but then we have next year that we're already taking into account. We had Lad McConkey and Nico Collins go home. And about a week later, Mike and I did a Combat Zone. And we see the ADPs drop. I took Lad, Mike took Nico, and they're about 7-8 picks apart right now in ADP. They're close, but we'll see how things turn out. Now, 2 other players at the running back position who are close and it's played out in ADP early. This is for next year. Saquon Barkley, 2 overall, and Jahmyr Gibbs as the 5th player overall in round 1. They're that close. Barkley's going to get the edge for right now. but Gibbs and Barkley will be debated all throughout the summer and the offseason. So I'm going to rip on some Jahmyr Gibbs. He's going to be my guy. RB2 on the season, despite David Montgomery taking up so much backfield share. Gibbs was second in explosive rating with a 131 score. Gibbs was first in total touchdowns with 22, touchdown merchant. Second in receiving yards with 587. So this is even better in PPR leagues. Jared Goff, more adept at dumping the ball off to Gibbs versus Hurts, who's more likely to hand it to Saquon Barkley. Gibbs, third in rushing yards with 15, 17. Of course, Barkley has the edge there, but I think that gap can close. Fourth in receptions with 58 for Gibbs. Second in yards per reception at 10.1. As Gibbs becomes the 1A, clearly, those receptions are going to go up, and I expect the yards per reception number to continue. Why wouldn't it? Fourth in yards per route run with 2.56. Fourth in targets with 74. I expect the targets to go up for Jahmyr Gibbs. First, Jahmyr Gibbs in expected points added with 83.4. So he's the best of all running backs. Gibbs, third in evaded tackles with 88. Third in breakaway runs with 27. And in the best ball game that we love, Jahmyr Gibbs, second in best ball points added with 264.3. The constant theme in all these stats that I dropped, go on Player Profiler, search for Jahmyr Gibbs, search for Saquon Barkley. With Gibbs, you'll see 1s, 2s, 3s, 4s, all top 5 metrics for Jahmyr Gibbs. Jahmyr Gibbs is just hitting his stride. Very versatile skill set, and Gibbs is only getting better. We just got an appetizer, too, at the end of the fantasy football season. Of course, a lot of fantasy football championships were won with Jahmyr Gibbs going off against the 49ers. It was just an appetizer to Gibbs' potential. Gibbs, heading into his third season, he will be just 23 compared to Barkley's age 28 season. Barkley ran pure on health, so we'll see how long that lasts. Gibbs will have the dome advantage year over year in this discussion, so long as both players are healthy and playing at their apex. Give me Jahmyr Gibbs over Saquon Barkley in 2025. David Montgomery won't go away, but Gibbs, is he 1A in the Lions' potent offense? What do you got, Mike?
Sorry, I was on mute there. I got a lot to say about Saquon Barkley, and he just kind of paved the way here. Everything you said, I completely agree, but it's hard to knock what Saquon has done in the last 3 games here. While, Jahmyr Gibbs has kind of cooled off. So, Barkley outperforming Gibbs in 2025, and I think it's a reality. And let's talk about the sheer volume and consistency that Barkley brings to the table. Last season, Barkley finished with 2,400 total yards, including the regular season and playoffs. He's been a major factor to the Eagles' success. He's the reason why they're in the Super Bowl, and he's already set records for the most 60-plus yards touchdowns in a season, including 3 in this playoffs alone. His ability to break off long runs and dominate on the ground. Barkley's explosive upside is unmatched in comparison, while Gibbs has also shown flashes of brilliance. He's got more of a crowded backfield. He often shares touches with David Montgomery, and that has limited his overall volume, despite how impressive he is efficiency. Another reason is I'm leading towards Barkley over Gibbs is his role as the focal point of the offense. Barkley is essentially the engine behind the Eagles' attack, getting 20-plus touches in 9 out of the last 10 games, including a monster 118-yard, 3-touchdown performance this week in the NFC Championship game. His ability to impact both the running and passing game gives him an incredible floor, making him a fantasy workhorse. Gibbs, on the other hand, is yet to fully establish himself as the clear-cut back in Detroit, although he's had an impressive performances when Montgomery has been sidelined. There's just still a question on whether he'll receive the same volume consistently in 2025. So as of now, Barkley's workload, especially in crucial games, gives him the edge in terms of fantasy points. So I'm looking ahead at Barkley's situation. It offers more stability and upside for fantasy managers. He's playing on a team that's built to compete for championships. His performance has been pivotal in big games, including setting up the Eagles for the trip to the Super Bowl. The combination of his workload, explosiveness, impact on key drives means Barkley will continue to be a focal point in high-scoring matchups. Gibbs, while exciting player, is still part of a dynamic backfield in Detroit with Montgomery's injury. Gibbs will certainly see those opportunities like he saw, but Gibbs and Montgomery are going to coexist. And I just think that Barkley has got the lion's share. His dominance continues to shine in 3 playoff games this season. He totaled 442 yards and 5 touchdowns. He's now 7th all-time in playoff rushing. Just a testament to his big play ability. While Gibbs has certainly been a productive in stretches, he hasn't yet had the chance to prove himself in the same high-stakes scenarios that Barkley thrives in. So for 2025, I believe Barkley's established role, high volume workload, proven ability to produce when it matters most will lead to a more consistent and valuable performance than Gibbs will offer in 2025.
So you can, shy of dynasty, shy of your keeper leagues, you can have one, but you can't have both. You're going to have to make that decision. Now, if you do volume drafting on best ball, you don't have to make that choice per se, because in the first 2 spots, you can select Chase or Barkley. And then, of course, Jahmyr Gibbs is there at the 5 spot. So if you're in that tier of 3, 4, 5 versus 1, 2, you can just take it as you get it. But at some point in your redraft leagues, it may come down to where they are neck and neck as we crystallize towards August. A lot can happen. Great breakdown, Mike, on Saquon Barkley, Jahmyr Gibbs. It's funny enough to the audience at home, we're coming up with the names for our combat zone, and we were both talking like, man, we could do both of these guys. Either one, we could have Jahmyr Gibbs or Saquon Barkley. So we ended up flipping a coin. That's how close it was. And just as it fell, it made my job easy when I got Gibbs, and I just had all those metrics there. And then for Mike, hey, he can just lay back on Sunday. He's just thinking, man, Saquon Barkley is making this look easy with these 3 touchdowns and on the highest stage. So 2 great running backs. We'll keep an eye on them. And we will do more throughout the offseason with different ADP battles. We're going to have some quarterback and some tight end discussions that we want to pick. But also, as you're trying to decipher later in drafts, we're really going to be able to lock in and help you make some pivotal decisions. Because your drafts, they can be lost at the beginning of the draft if you make a crucial mistake. Between Gibbs and Saquon Barkley, if they're both healthy, they're not going to be mistake picks, but there can be some huge value later on. So Mike and I, stay with us. We will mine value for you. Mike, you got anything else for us tonight?
No, man. I think it was a nice show, and yeah, we'll hit these guys off with a bang here, buddy.
Hey, keep locking in, and we will see you next week.
Hey, I want to thank you for being part of this broadcast. If you have any thoughts on it, leave a comment. If you enjoyed it, make sure you leave a like. And if you want to see more shows on the Player Profiler channel, subscribe to it. That's how we know you want more.